Hello, good evening, morning, good afternoon. It was the Japanese scholar Ken Yamamoto. He used to be a regular contributor to the New Zimbabwe in the 80s, 90s. And he had visited Zimbabwe and stayed there for some time. And he was the one who came up with the conclusion that Zimbabwe had the potential to become the South Korea of Africa, a developed country, prosperous, at peace with itself. But alas, we took the wrong turn. And we became the North Korea of Africa. South Korea has prospered. There can be no doubt about that. When you compare South Korea, this is a zoom up of the two countries. North Korea, that's the border there, and South Korea. You can see from the network of roads, it looks like a spider's web. And yet, across the border in North Korea, there's very few roads there. The picture of South Korea at night is fascinating. It really represents how far South Korea has gone in terms of development. The country at night looks like a, a lit up Christmas tree. And if one was to compare it with the North, the difference is that's unbelievable. The North looks like Zimbabwe with the load shedding, Harare with the load shedding, a few lights here and there. That is how far the two countries have gone. So I think one has got to ask, what went wrong with Zimbabwe? Where did we take the wrong turn? The answer to that is varied. But I think the main reason for it is that the last 44 years, we have failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. We have been stuck with a corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical regime. And 44 years of gross mismanagement or rampant corruption have taken its toll. The other day, I was talking to somebody who was telling me that they've just been driving along the Bulawayo Victoria Falls Road. The road is in such a poor state that some sections of it, the tarmac is the middle strip that's disappeared. And so that drive, instead of taking 3 hours, may take you twice as long, 6 hours, because you've got to slow down. And yet, Victoria Falls is the prime tourist resort. You would think that a country that is so desperate for foreign currency will at least be promoting business. It's not. We have become the North Korea of Africa, all right. Ironically, North Korea is called the Democratic Republic of North Korea. The one thing it is not is, of course, democratic. And Zimbabwe has followed that route. ZANU-PF rigged the 2023 elections. And that has set the agenda for the country. This is a pariah state that has absolutely no respect for basic human rights, including the right of the individual to have meaningful say in the governance of the country. This right has become so important. It's more than just a right. This is the very essence of good governance. The difference between South Korea and North Korea is governance. One is a healthy and functioning democracy where the ordinary people, everybody has a meaningful say in the governance of the country. The other one is a classical dictatorship. The family that has ruled that country is a dynasty, gone from father to son, and then to grandson. And like all dictatorship, it's been obsessed by security. It's a police state where people live in fear. No one dares say anything. Zimbabwe is the same. Zimbabwe will become a police state. Ever since our independence, Robert Mugabe has invested so much in the army, the police, and the CIO. In his happy moods, on one occasion, Didmas Mutasa, when he was in Mugabe's cabinet, was boasting that the regime knows what every Zimbabwean is doing. To emphasize the level of CIOs. Many people you think it is a colleague or is a waitress or a teacher or something, and yet you find what he is a teacher, and yet he is also a CIO. And whatever you do, you say, it will be recorded and passed on to the regime. And the regime has concentrated so much, invested so much in retaining power at all costs that it has neglected the welfare of the people. And to come back to the issue of free, fair, and credible election, it is a pity that Zimbabwe, this was one of the big issues that the nation fought for, the fight for independence. Blacks in white ruled Rhodesia did not have a vote. If you are black, you were considered to be a third class citizen who could not be trusted to use the vote wisely. And so you were denied the vote. And so the right to a meaningful vote was, of course, a top priority. This was one of the rights that people were prepared to sacrifice their lives for. And yet, after independence, we never got it. In 1980, when Mugabe was at the threshold of getting into power, he changed the rules. One man, one vote was thrown out of the window. As far as Mugabe and his colleagues were concerned, if ZANU-PF does not win the 1980 election, then the Bush War would continue. And so the people were forced to vote to end the Bush War. And when he got into power, his number one priority was to consolidate his hold on power. The Kukura-Wundi massacre was designed to consolidate his hold on power. Because at the end of it, he forced the late Joshua Nkomo to sign the Unity Accord, opening the door to the formation of a de facto one-party state. The people's right to a meaningful vote was forgotten. So in our case in Zimbabwe, when it comes to why have we failed to deliver this promise, this fundamental right, the right to a meaningful vote after independence, the number one culprit is definitely ZANU-PF. They created a de facto one-party state for the sake of denying the ordinary people the vote. Since the late 1990s, the people had a concerted effort to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship. The rallying call in the late 1990s was that we need democratic changes to stop ZANU-PF wrecking the elections. Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends were elected on the wave of that sentimental, of that popular sentiment, democratic change. Alas, they didn't deliver it. Even when they had the golden opportunity to do so during the GNU of 2008 to 2013, they sold out. Mugabe realized that if he can bribe them, promise them that they will have a share of the spoils of power, they will forget about the reforms. And they did. They failed to implement even one token reform during those GNU years. And ever since the GNU, Nelson Chamisa and company have participated in these flawed elections, knowing fully well that ZANU-PF was rigging the elections. They participated regardless because they also knew that ZANU-PF was offering a few gravitant seats to those who participated. That has been our problem here. The third factor that has contributed to our failure to deliver on this issue of a meaningful vote is the people themselves. I think the people themselves failed to appreciate the importance of a meaningful vote. While one can sympathize with the 1980 electorate, it's very hard for somebody to argue looking up the business end of an AK-47 rifle. The people could not challenge Robert Mugabe and say, no, we'll still vote for whoever we like. Because to be quite honest, when they made that threat, the people wanted to make their point, they would have voted the opposition just to make sure that ZANU-PF does not get into power. But we cannot also deny that since the elections, since 1980, there hasn't been many chances to force ZANU-PF to implement the reforms. Like I said, the late 1990s, the people came to a consensus that we needed the democratic changes. But the people themselves did not pay attention, sit up and pay attention. What is it exactly when you say you want democratic change? What is it exactly you wanted? They did not define it. And hence the reason why Morgan Tsvangirai and company were voted into power. And as soon as they got into power and they were bribed, they forgot about the reforms. The people themselves, if they'd been wide awake, they would have turned around to the MDC leaders and told them, no. We elected you to implement the democratic changes, to restore the right of every individual to a meaningful vote. What happened? The people did not do that. And the tragedy is they've not done it even to this day with the benefit of hindsight. Whether we like it or not, Zimbabwe is a failed state, and we are not going to get out of this hole without addressing the fundamental problem of bad governance. And the surest way of addressing it is to make sure that we implement the democratic reforms to guarantee free, fair, and credible elections. By now, we should be smart enough to realize that the MDC/CCC have sold out. They are not up to the task. If they fail to implement even one token reform in 23 years, it is naive to think they'll do so now. In fact, if anything at all, we now have a situation where the opposition has become it's tradition for them to participate in flawed elections, win those few gravitran seats, and then complain that the elections were rigged. You complain that the elections were rigged, and yet you're the one who participate without any reforms. They've been paying lip service to reforms, to free and fair elections. When they participated last year, right up to the last minute, Chamisa claimed that CCC was going to win big because they plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. They just wanted people to participate so that the process is given legitimacy and ZANU-PF can continue in power and they'll get a share of the spoils of power. And afterwards, of course, the old song was restarted. The elections were rigged. You can't keep on talking of the elections were rigged and yet you're the one who keep on participating in those elections to give the process legitimacy. It doesn't make any sense at all. At least it doesn't make any sense unless you understand that here is somebody who's just paying lip service to free, fair, and credible elections. I believe Zimbabwe has still got the potential to become a prosperous nation, to become the South Korea of Africa. We only have to sort out this problem of bad governance. And the starting point, implement the reforms so that we've got free, fair, and credible elections. It's not rocket science. The people of South Korea and North Korea are the same people. Why one is prosperous and the other one is a failed state? It's because of the leadership. South Korea is a democratic country where leaders are held to account, where leaders get their mandate to govern from the people and they're accountable to the people. In North Korea, it's another matter. The leaders are not accountable to the people at all. They don't hold free, fair. They don't hold any elections, as far as I know, in North Korea. It's a police state. Billions of dollars have been poured into the army and, and building nuclear weapons and threatening everybody. While the country, millions of their people are languishing in abject poverty. Just as has happened in Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, at least the government there acknowledges the need to hold elections. They've only managed to get away with failing to hold free, fair, and credible elections. But that has been, like I said, with the connivance of the opposition and on the part of the ordinary people, their ignorance. People should never have participated in last year's elections, for instance, because they should have understood by now that when you participate, you're only giving the process legitimacy. And at the end of the day, you're just perpetuating your own suffering. And how foolish is that? Yes, I think Ken Yamamoto was absolutely right. Zimbabwe has the potential. What we need to become the South Korea of Africa. Free, democratic, prosperous, at peace with itself. Only problem we did is that we took the wrong turn. And for the last 44 years, we have accepted ZANU-PF rigging the elections again and again and again. The picture I'm showing there is downtown Seoul, capital city of South Korea. It's all lit up. Zimbabwe at night, sometimes even the capital city, Harare, you can hardly see, you see only a few lights. The rest of the country is in a mess, it's in darkness. Load shedding has become the norm. And as for the roads, even those roads that are connecting cities, big centers, have got potholes. We could not even maintain what we inherited from the white regime in 1980, let alone add new infrastructure. Zimbabwe is a failed state. It is within our power to change it. The only thing we have got to understand is that we've got to put our foot down and insist that we want free, fair, and credible elections. We, the people, should elect opposition leaders who will focus on getting those free, fair, and credible elections. The fact that MDC Triple C guys have failed to deliver on that does not mean we don't need free and fair elections anymore, or we cannot attain that goal. It is shocking that we still have some Zimbabweans out there who still have no clue what has been happening. And that is not helping, because a democracy can only work when you've got an electorate who are informed, knowledgeable, and diligent. If you still don't know what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections at this point in time, and you have the vote, well, you shouldn't have the vote. You really do not deserve to have the vote, because you are exactly what regimes like ZANU-PF want. You're easily conned and cheated. That is not helping building a healthy and functioning democracy. Still, there's many people out there who should really understand what free, fair, and credible elections are. That MDC Triple C leaders have failed and should be able to articulate why we need competent opposition leaders, why they're not saying anything, why they're doing nothing. Beggars belief. That is another problem with Zimbabwe. Even those who should have the knowledge, who should understand what's going on, either don't understand it or they've chosen to say nothing. Think about it. Thank you very much for listening, and good night.